All right, everyone, we just have one exciting topic to discuss today, and it has to do with when us Nintendo fans can finally expect to see the next mainline Direct presentation finally officially revealed and announced from Nintendo, as clearly 2022 was a very interesting year because we did not have that historical summertime E3 branded Direct. And in today's video, I want to break down and discuss the reason you guys are going to be seeing a lot of Nintendo Direct talk in the upcoming weeks as we lead into September, have a look at the history of how frequently Nintendo puts on a Direct in September, and have that final discussion on what games, if at all, we can expect to be a part of this full mainline Direct presentation. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. Now, as I mentioned, guys, we are just tackling one subject today, and it has to do with when can us Nintendo fans finally expect the next mainline Direct presentation from Nintendo. As if you keep up with the Nintendo news cycle throughout the year, you know the typical pattern is 3 mainline general Direct presentations per year, normally one in the January to March time frame to start off the year, most frequently held in February. We get the first mainline general Direct presentation held to kick off the year. Then in the summertime, we expect Nintendo to align themselves with E3, which of course was entirely canceled in the year of 2022, but is due for return in 2023. And 9 times out of 10, you can expect a E3 branded Nintendo Direct presentation that typically has some big blowout titles because Nintendo tends to like to steal the show at events like E3 whenever possible. And then finally, towards the back half of the year, we get that final Direct presentation, most frequently held in September, although there are some exceptions to that rule, and we will definitely break those down as well. Now, in terms of why these rumors are about to ramp right back up to full speed online in the upcoming weeks as we get closer to September is one, because it is just time to expect Nintendo to communicate with their fans again around their first party titles, because while we did have some Direct presentations over the course of the summer, such as the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Focus Direct, as well as the Splatoon 3 Focus Direct, and then a mini partner showcase in the middle of that highlighted Nintendo's upcoming third party releases, we know that Nintendo historically likes to keep momentum very strong around them being talked about in the media with new projects and new Switch games that are on the horizon. And while you can definitely argue that 2022 is already a very stacked year for the Nintendo Switch, we still have the lead up to the holiday season of sales around us, which skyrocket because all the kids get what they've wanted all year long, which is a brand new Switch console. People get extra Christmas money, so they're able to put it towards things like gaming if that is your hobby. And historically, both digital and retail sales just always skyrocket at that time of year, and Nintendo wants to have some new things on shelf to help their bottom line and drive additional revenue, of course. And while we will get into some of the specifics on what projects they may be, it is just logical sense at this point in time to expect Nintendo to be holding some kind of presentation. In addition to that, you do have Nate the Hate mentioning this on his most recent podcast that I will have linked in the description down below. It's a great listen, and it talks about Nintendo and their marketing plans and their strategies. And Nate was one of the people that were saying, when everyone was expecting a Direct to take place in the middle of June, like we historically saw Nintendo do, he was saying, have patience, it's towards the end or it's later on. He was essentially calling out the fact that what he had heard from his connections with developers or whatever contacts he has in the industry, that the presentation would be coming later than expected in the month of June. And while he was not certain on what kind of Direct it would ultimately be, we did see that Direct mini partner showcase ultimately align with that timeline and his expectations on when it would be taking place. I think even him calling out the exact day on Family boards before it was officially announced, when Alana Pierce was the one saying it would be June 29th, he was saying he heard Tuesday or Wednesday, and that he ultimately landed on saying that it would be actually Tuesday the 28th, which is exactly what happened. And on that podcast episode, he did say that he heard that there are plans to have a September Nintendo Direct, and once again, not sure around the branding or what will be featured there, but that's tentatively the plan. And like I said, whether or not you want to buy into any of the quote unquote insiders out there that have somewhat of a track record online, if you just want to dismiss all of that and just look at the historical facts, we have a lot of data to look at, because as I mentioned, Nintendo 9 times out of 10 does not miss the September date to communicate with their fans, and I don't think there's any reason to expect them to skip it this year, especially in light of the fact that they completely missed their traditional summertime Direct presentation. And there are some projects, hopefully heavily rumored projects, projects that we can see revealed at this event, and September is the time window to do it, to drum up that marketing hype and excitement for the end of this year to carry us through holiday season, and then ultimately to get a little sneak preview of what's to come into the early part of next year before we get probably that next direct, which would be most likely in the February time window in 2023. And so to quickly look at the history of the September dates of Nintendo Directs, you have September 23rd, 2021, we got a mainline direct presentation. 2020, a very interesting year in the height of the pandemic, we did still get a direct mini partner showcase on September 17th in 2020. Then we had September 4th in 2019, a mainline direct presentation. September 13th in 2018, mainline direct presentation. September 13th again in 2017, mainline direct presentation. September 1st of 2016 was a 3DS focused Nintendo Direct, but still one held in that month. And if you go back any older than 2016, Nintendo was still pretty unpredictable at that point, as they had only been doing Nintendo Direct presentations since 2012, so for about 4 years, and you had primarily November Directs take place in those initial years when Nintendo was first putting on these Direct presentations, and 2016 and beyond being when we really kicked into the schedule that we see them more loosely sticking to now, with the 3 main general directs every year, and September being the date for that final direct of the year ever since they went to that pattern, which is still ultimately what we should expect to take hold today. So essentially, consistently for the last 5 years in a row, we have gotten a Nintendo Direct in September, and while you can have some argue and debate online around whether or not it will be a mainline showcase or just another kind of partner showcase, or maybe even a game-specific focus direct, I don't think that any of those make near as much sense as having that traditional big comeback or a mainline direct. And if we do indeed see that event take place, we have to discuss what are some titles and some big reveals that we can expect to be featured there, because there's a lot of exciting prospects. And to get some of the easy stuff out of the way that I think is a pretty safe bet, we will get a Nintendo Switch Online section of a September Direct. Historically, Nintendo, since launching Nintendo Switch Online back in 2018, have featured major updates for the service, like the SNES library of games originally in 2019 at the September Direct, and then in 2021 getting the N64 and Sega Genesis consoles added into the service. Those have always been done at the September time window Direct, which is when a lot of subscription renewals are around the corner, because that's when Nintendo has originally launched the service and then updated it with the expansion pack. And so you name it, they want to get people to resubscribe around that time window, and providing new value and new excitement around the service is the way to do that and make sure that people stay subscribed, especially if you are on the annual plan that comes due around that time frame. And what will the Nintendo Switch Online section entail? Most likely something like new family of systems, and or we may just get a more detailed look at what the N64 game library has to offer in the future, and they might have some big blockbuster N64 games that everybody wants to see, and maybe they just lead that route and they don't feel like they need to add in a new system to the service yet. Or, and what I am hoping we see there, is the announcement of the Game Boy family of systems, most notably Game Boy Advance, most likely being a part of something like the expansion pack. And if Nintendo's super generous, maybe they add in the Game Boy and Game Boy Color to the base tier of the service, which I do think you can argue needs more ongoing support when it comes to retro titles. And so I think that makes a ton of sense, as well as maybe giving us an update on Wave 3 of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass. Like, yes, did we just get Wave 2? We absolutely did, but you might want to include the trailer to remind people that that comes with the expansion pack on NSO. And so I think it's a fairly safe bet to say that we might see that mentioned, or maybe we get new DLC for a game that we don't know is in development yet. I am hopeful it's something like Mario Party Superstars. I definitely think that game needs DLC, and you could create it and throw it onto the expansion pack and have it as that additional value point to become a subscriber for the service. And now from there, you have a very heavily rumored remake slash remaster from Nintendo's past that we could see brought up at this event. We are talking about Metroid Prime 1 Remake, as this one has been in the rumor mill cycle for quite some time now. Jeff Grubb claiming that it will absolutely be out this year, even has his hair on the line for it. Emily Rogers also stating that she knows that this game is in development and is most likely now the Prime 1 remake, as opposed to the original thought, which was that it would be a Trilogy HD port. And even Nate the Hate also chiming in on this one, expecting this game to ultimately come to fruition, and the September Direct is the perfect and most logical time window to reveal it. Of course, we still know that Metroid Prime 4 is in active development, and I'm not expecting that game to be ready to go anytime soon, but why not get fans re-immersed in the franchise that is now 20 years old at this point, being the Prime series? Give us Prime 1 fully remade and remastered from the ground up, and show Nintendo Switch owners why they want to be on the ride and the hype and anticipation train for Metroid Prime 4. And if we're super lucky, maybe we get the announcement for Metroid Prime 1 Remake and then actually a gameplay trailer to go along with that for Metroid Prime 4 to say, go revisit the past of the series, and also here's why you should be super excited for what we have to come in the future. And if there's one game that I'm willing to put my money on over any others that we'll talk about in today's video, I do think that Metroid Prime 1 Remake is the most safe bet to expect from unannounced Nintendo projects. Now, next are a couple titles we've talked about numerous times on the channel, so I won't spend a lot of time on these, but in my personal opinion, this September Direct is our last opportunity as Zelda fans to expect any kind of announcement around Wind Waker HD and or Twilight Princess HD coming over to the Nintendo Switch, at least in a pre-Breath of the Wild 2 world. Like, could they come in 2024 after Nintendo releases Breath of the Wild 2 next spring? Absolutely, that's back on the table, but if we are to expect them anytime in the near future, obviously this is the last event that it could happen, because you don't just shadow drop Zelda games. They are typically a show closer for a direct presentation, and whether or not we even see games like Breath of the Wild 2 are definitely up in the air, because depending on if Nintendo is launching that game in early spring or late spring, we may or may not see that game saved for the blowout presentation to take place in February next year, if that is when we are expecting Nintendo to hold their first of year Direct, which I definitely would. That game's literally a coin toss on whether or not it will be at this Direct, and if it's not at this Direct and there's nothing Zelda at this Direct, it will be a little bit of a letdown for me. I've definitely been pulling for those games to come over, and I hope that they are real ports that are ready to go and ready to be launched on the Switch. But if they're not at the event and you want to play those games anytime before 2024 or beyond, well, then it's time to start looking into the used market for Wii U's at that point, because this is our last chance for those games. Now, there's a few more wildcard titles that may or may not be at this Direct presentation, but I do think that having one or multiple of them revealed make a lot of sense, and we have to go back to the long-rumored Donkey Kong game that, if you just look at the amount of time it's been since we've had a Donkey Kong, it's like Tropical Freeze. Yeah, it got ported to the Switch, but that's a 2014 Wii U game, and that's the last entry in the series. Clearly, Nintendo's going to do something big with Donkey Kong again, and if the rumors are true around the Mario team working on this title, well, then it could be something that we don't even expect in terms of gameplay, and I'm ready for a new, fresh Donkey Kong experience. That one makes a ton of sense for me. F-Zero, something new in that franchise, has recently made the rounds online, most notably because Silex Hunter, not to be confused with Samus Hunter, not the same person, and one that just quite honestly obliterated all of the other quote-unquote leakers that were out there on Twitter claiming they knew stuff, and I very much enjoyed that back and forth when it originally unfolded. But Silex Hunter is the person who called the exact date of the Direct Mini, also the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC, when everybody else was thinking that it was going to be an entirely new Mario Kart project, and the exact launch date of Bayonetta 3, as well as the trailer a day or two in advance before that came out. So yes, this person so far has 3 ridiculously out there, like, how would you just guess that type of track record, and has 0 wrong information. And they created something that says you got boost power, which was like, it kind of has a little history to it, but essentially that decodes to a reference directly to F-Zero GX, with the person figuring that out saying that essentially, great, I've really wanted a new F-Zero game. Silex Hunter responding, maybe manage your expectations a little bit, but yes, you were right. Essentially being like, is this F-Zero GX remastered coming to the Nintendo Switch? That's what I think it is, and I think that makes the most sense. If Nintendo's toying around with the idea of bringing back this franchise, you might as well remaster the last entry in it as far as its mainline home console releases, and bring that over and see where the fan response ultimately falls. You also have things like a new Fire Emblem game that we actually have leaked screenshots of, so that's definitely going to be something at some point in time that Nintendo will acknowledge and finally reveal. Will we ever see a game like Pikmin 4 that we supposedly have been in development for God knows how long, probably restarted along the way? Don't know all the history with that game, but could we have some left field titles like that show up at this Direct? Absolutely. I wouldn't expect all of them by any means, but I do think that there is a large host of games that Nintendo does have behind the scenes right now that we could see brought up, and this would be the time frame to do it. But I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, all your personal thoughts and speculation around what you think we will see Nintendo do this year, with it being kind of a different year altogether, since of course we didn't get their typical summertime E3 Direct style presentation? Do you think Nintendo goes back to their regular cadence and we do see them hold the September Direct? Or are you in the camp that you think it's most likely that Nintendo won't communicate anything to us until next year? I definitely don't think that's the case, but I can see why with the unpredictability around Nintendo that some would just like to have their expectations lowered. So I totally get that. And also share with me, if we do indeed see this event take place, which games you think Nintendo will choose to show off at this presentation and which ones you hope are there the most. So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. So watch the weekend video next if you haven't already, where we discuss some interesting tactics that Nintendo has been using more and more frequently with new first-party Nintendo Switch games and what it means for the future of performance on the Nintendo Switch base console we have today. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.